Oozing. A man in his 30s is walking down a dirt road outside a village called Bethany. He is 2 days late. We purpose. He is known for almost a week that his friend is sick. He is known for 2 days that his friend is dead. And he has chosen, deliberately, to wait to let the body sit in a stone tomb in the warm Judean afternoon, long enough that the sister of the dead man will say, oozing, out loud, in front of everyone, Lord, by this time he stinketh. He is walking toward that sentence on purpose. And in about 20 minutes, when the other sister falls at his feet in the dust and starts wailing, the God of the universe, the one who hung the stars in the dark before. There was a word for dark is going to break down and cry. A God who creates a galaxy does not weep over a man, oozing, unless God is also the man. Unless God is walking on a dirt road in a country roughly the size of New Jersey, 2,000 years ago, on his way to a grave he could have prevented by showing up on time. This is not a story about grievance. This is not a story about 3 verses in a red-letter Bible. This is not a story about a doctrine. This is a story about 3 moments when the God of the universe broke down and cried, and a 4th one almost no preacher will mention, oozing. The 4th weeping does not happen at a tomb. It doesn't happen over a city. It doesn't happen in a garden. It happens in a place nobody expected, and the man weeping has a name almost everyone watching this video already knows. But we will not get to him yet. We will get to him at the end. Here's what most people miss. There is not one Greek word for weeping in the Gospels, oozing. There are 3, dakruo, kleio, crouge. Each one means something different. Each one is used of Jesus in a different moment. And when you line them up side by side, quiet tears at a tomb, public wailing over a city, a scream alone in a garden, the vocabulary itself starts to tell you a story your Sunday school never told you. The shortest verse in the entire Bible is 2 words, oozing. Jesus wept. You can read it in less time than it takes to draw a breath. Most people have. Most people stop there. If you stop there, you have not even started. Pay attention to this. The 3 weepings of Christ are not the same, weeping repeated 3 times. They are 3 completely different kinds of crying. A different word, for a different reason, oozing. A different thing breaking inside his chest each time. And one of them, the 3rd one, is so physically violent that a Scottish physician in 1847 had to write an entire medical treatise to explain how a human body could survive what Luke describes. A man, on a road, walking toward a grave he is about to make himself angry at. That is where we are going first, oozing. So sit down, for something warm, and let's go to Bethany. Bethany is 2 miles east of Jerusalem. Close enough that on a clear day, from the top of the Mount of Olives, you can see one from the other. Close enough that the priests in the temple courts would have heard, by the end of that week, what happened in the small stone house with the courtyard, oozing. Close enough that what Jesus does in Bethany will be the reason the Sanhedrin meets in private 4 days later and decides he has to die. In that small stone house, a man named Lazarus has been dead for 4 days. His name means God has helped. He was a friend of Jesus, not a disciple, not a follower in the crowd, a friend. The gospel writer says it plainly, he whom you lovest is sick, and uses the Greek word phileo, oozing, the love of companionship, of meals, of evenings on a roof with the lamps lit. Lazarus has 2 sisters. The older one is Martha. She is the one who serves dinner. She is the one who 3 chapters earlier in Luke told Jesus to make her sister help with the dishes. She is practical. She is the kind of woman who keeps a household running and who, when grievance comes, oozing, grieves with her sleeves rolled up. The younger one is Mary. She is the one who weeks later will for a year's wages of perfume on Jesus' feet and wipe them with her hair. She is the one who feels everything all the way down. When she grieves, the house grieves with her. Their brother has been dead 4 days. In the climate of Judea, 4 days is not an abstraction, oozing. 4 days is decomposition. 4 days is the smell beginning to leak out of the linen wrappings. 4 days is past the window. The rabbis taught for any hope of resuscitation. The tradition said, the soul lingered near the body for 3 days, hoping to return, and on the 4th day departed for good. 4 days is the day hope died. Jesus arrives on the 4th day, oozing, on purpose. Martha hears he is coming. and walks out to meet him on the road. The first sentence out of her mouth is not a question. It is closer to an accusation, said gently. "Lord, if thou hadst been here, my brother had not died." Read that out loud. Sit with it. That is what grievance sounds like when it is too tired to hide. Jesus does not weep yet. He talks with Martha about the resurrection. He says one of the most staggering sentences in the entire Bible. "I am the resurrection and the life." And Martha goes back to the house and gets Mary. Mary comes running. She falls at his feet in the dust. The mourners follow her, wailing. The Greek word for what Mary and the crowd are doing is klio, loud, public, throat-tearing wailing. The same word the Gospels use of mothers grieving dead children. It is the sound of a culture that did not hide its sorrow behind sunglasses. And then only then, after the wailing reaches him, the verse says it. Jesus wept. 2 words in English. 1 word in Greek, adakrison. From the verb dakro, it means to quietly shed tears. Here is what most people miss. The crowd around him is using 1 word for crying. Klio, loud, audience, municipal. Jesus is using a different word, dakruo, silent, private. The tears of a man who does not need to perform his sorrow because his sorrow is real. He doesn't wail with them, he weeps. But there is another Greek word in that scene, and it is the one that changes the story. Poor 33, he groaned in the spirit and was troubled. The English makes it sound like sadness. The Greek does not. The word is embryomai, and in ancient Greek literature outside the Bible, it is used of war horses snorting in fury before a battle. It is the sound a stallion makes with its nostrils flared and its muscles tight. Jesus does not approach the tomb of his sad friend. He approaches it angry, but it gets stranger. He is not angry at Mary. He is not angry at Martha. He is not angry at the crowd. He is angry at death itself. He is standing in front of a grave, the way a father stands in front of the disease that killed his child with a fury that has nowhere to put itself except into action. Augustine, writing about this scene in the 4th century, said something almost no preacher will quote in church. He said that Christ troubled himself on purpose, that he chose, deliberately, to be moved so that the believer would know it is permitted, even commanded, to weep over the death of those we love. There is a quiet theology in that. The God who made the human body, the God who designed tear ducts before there was anything to cry about, the God who programmed grievance into the nervous system of every creature with a face that God, in the flesh, on a dirt road in Bethany, did not bypass his own design. He used it, he cried, and then he walked to the tomb. It was a cave with a stone rolled in front of it. He told them to roll it back. Martha practical. Martha said the thing nobody wanted to say. Lord, by this time he stinketh, the Greek. There is just as blunt. He smells. They rolled the stone back anyway. Jesus looked up at the sky for a moment, said a sentence to his father, and then he called a dead man by name, Lazarus. Come forth. And Lazarus came forth, bound hand and foot with grave clothes, his face wrapped in a napkin, walking out of his own grave 4 days late, on the day hope was supposed to be dead. The tears that had just fallen from the face of God a few minutes earlier were not just love. They were a declaration of war, and the war was against the grave.
So that is the first one. A God who cries silent tears at the graveside of a friend, and who is actually angry at death itself. Dakar uo, Emberim amai, a man on a dirt road in Bethany declaring war on the grave with his own tear ducts. We have 2 more to go. And the second one is not what you think it is, because the second time Jesus cries in the Bible, he is not crying over a person, he is crying over a place. Before we get there, if this is feeding you, do me one small favor and tap the subscribe button. We are building this channel for people who want to sit with Scripture the way it was meant to be sat with. Slowly, honestly, no shortcuts, and drop a comment with where you are watching from tonight. I read everyone. Now, the second weeping. A donkey, a city, and a man on the back of that donkey looking 40 years into the future and breaking down. Stay with me. It is the Sunday before Passover. A man rides a borrowed donkey down the western slope of the Mount of Olives. There is a crowd in front of him and a crowd behind him. They are tearing branches from the palm trees on the side of the road and laying them under the donkey's hooves. They are shouting Hosanna, a Hebrew word that began as a prayer for rescue and has, over the centuries, drifted into something closer to a cheer. They think they are watching a coronation. He knows he is riding toward a cross. Down the slope of the Mount of Olives, there is a bend in the road where the city of Jerusalem suddenly appears across the Kidron Valley. White stone, gold roof on the temple catching the afternoon light, walls 30 feet high. A population swelling to 2.5 million for the feast. He comes around the bend. He sees the city, and he starts to wail. Not weep. Not shed silent tears like he did at the grave of his friend. The Greek word changes. In Luke 19, verse 41, the word is klio, the same word that was used of Mary at the tomb. The same word the Gospels use of mothers grieving dead children. It's loud. It is public. It is the sound of a man who has stopped being able to hold something in. Picture that for a second. A grown man on the back of a donkey, in the middle of a parade thrown in his honor. In front of a crowd that is shouting his name and he is weeping out loud, open-mouthed. The way you have wept maybe 2 or 3 times in your entire life, in the dark with the door closed. That is what is happening on that road. Here's the part nobody tells you. He is not crying because they rejected him. He is not crying for himself. 6 days from now he will be nailed to a piece of wood by the same people waving palm branches at him. And he will not weep over that. He will say, Father, forgive them. He will not cry for his own death. He is crying because of what he sees. Luke records what he says next, and it is one of the most chilling sentences in the Gospels. If thou hadst known, even thou, at least in this thy day, the things which belong unto thy peace. But now they are hidden from thine eyes. And then he gets specific. He says, and this is verbatim from Luke 19, verses 43 and 40, for the days shall come upon thee, that thine enemies shall cast a trench about thee, and compass thee round, and keep thee in on every side, and shall lay thee even with the ground, and thy children within thee. The Greek word he uses for trench is crais. It means a palisade, a wall of sharpened wooden stakes driven into the earth. It is a military word. He is not speaking in poetry. He is describing a seat. He is seeing in real time on the back of that donkey, 40 years into the future. Pay attention to this, because what he sees will happen on the calendar. In the year at 70, almost exactly 40 years after that Sunday afternoon, a Roman general named Titus, the son of the Emperor Vespasian, will surround the city of Jerusalem with 4 legions of soldiers. He will build around the entire wall of the city an earthen embankment topped with sharpened wooden stakes. Crais. The exact word Jesus had wept. The siege will last almost 5 months. Inside the walls, the population will starve. There is a Jewish historian named Flavius Josephus who was alive during the siege, who watches it happen, and who writes down what he sees in a book called The Wars of the Jews. You can read it tonight. It is online. Josephus records, and this is not exaggeration. This is on the record from a man who was there, that 1,100,000 Jews hid inside the walls of Jerusalem during that siege. He records that mothers, mad with starvation, ate their own children inside the city. He records that the temple, the golden temple Jesus had just been looking at when he started crying, was burned to the ground. And here is the detail almost no one in church will ever tell you. Josephus records that the temple was burned on the 9th day of the month of Av, the same day of the year. On the Jewish calendar, that the first temple had been burned by Nebuchadnezzar 500 years earlier. The same day, Jesus saw all of it, on the back of a donkey, 6 days before the cross, with palm branches falling around the donkey's hooves and people shouting his name. He saw the wooden stakes. He saw the starving mothers. He saw the temple smoke rising on the 9th of Av. And he wept the way a mother wept over a coffin. He did not weep because he was weak. He didn't cry because he had lost control. He did not cry because the Father had abandoned the plan. He wept because love that sees the future weeps for what love that lives in the present cannot. That is the second weeping. A God who cries over cities, who sees the disaster coming for a people who do not know it is coming, who would rather break down on a donkey than pretend he doesn't feel it. If you have ever wept over a person you loved who was walking, with their eyes wide open, into something they could not see, a marriage that was about to end, a child making a decision that would cost them a decade, a city you grew up in that was losing itself. Then you have wept the same kind of weeping he wept on that road. You learned it from him. Stay with me, because the third weeping is the loudest one, and it is the one almost nobody in church wants to sit with for very long. It is Thursday night, a Passover moon full, the way Passover moons always are, hangs over the Kidron Valley. There are 11 men walking with the 12th across the brook and up the western slope of the Mount of Olives, toward a grove of old olive trees that has a name in Aramaic. The name is Gethsemane. It means the oil press. That is not a coincidence. An olive press is where olives are crushed under stone until oil comes out of them. He is about to walk into a grove that bears the name of crushing, and what happens in that grove will be, medically, one of the most physically violent breakdowns ever recorded in any literature. He leaves 8 of the disciples near the entrance. He takes 3 further in: Peter, James, John, the same 3 who saw him on the Mount of Transfiguration with his face shining like the sun. He brings them now to see him on a different mountain, with his face in the dirt. He says to them, "My soul is exceedingly sorrowful, even unto death." Read that out loud. Sorrowful unto death. He is saying his grievance is heavy enough to kill him, not metaphorically. He means it. He walks a stone's throw further, falls on his face in the dust between the roots of an olive tree old enough to remember David. And then comes the third weeping. Hebrews chapter 5, verse 7 describes it. Who in the days of his flesh, when he had offered up prayers and supplications with strong crying and tears unto him that was able to save him from death. The Greek word for strong crying is cries. It is not silent tears. It is not public wailing. It's a scream. The same God who shed silent tears at the tomb of his friend. The same God who wailed on the back of a donkey over a city. That same God, alone in a garden in the dark, is screaming into the ground. Luke, who was a physician, he is named that way in Colossians. Luke, the beloved physician, Luke writes down a detail none of the other gospel writers include. Luke chapter 22, verse 44. And being in an agony, he prayed more earnestly, and his sweat was as it were great drops of blood falling down to the ground. For most of church history, people read that line as poetry, as a figure of speech. His sweat was like blood. They thought Luke was being dramatic. He was not. In 1847, a Scottish physician named William Stroud published a medical treatise on the physical cause of the death of Christ. In it, he documented a rare medical condition that has, since then, been given a name. The name is hematidrosis. Under sufficient psychological stress, the kind of stress a human body is not designed to survive, the capillaries surrounding the sweat glands rupture. Blood leaks into the sweat. The person, literally, sweats blood. It has been documented in soldiers the night before a battle they did not expect to live through. It has been documented in prisoners on the morning of an execution. It is rare. It is real. And it is what Luke, the physician, is describing. Jesus, alone in the dark, under an olive tree, is sweating blood into the dirt. Stay with me, because this is the part the modern world has forgotten how to feel. If you have ever stood beside an open grave for someone you loved more than you knew how to say, a parent, a child, a spouse, a friend who went too early, you know something most centuries did not have a word for. You know the way the air feels heavier than physics should allow. You know the way you forget, for half a second, that they are gone, and then you remember, and the remembering knocks the wind out of you. You know the way you are angry at something you cannot name. Multiply that by the weight of every grave that has ever been dug. Multiply it by the weight of every grave that will be dug. Multiply it by the weight of every sin every human being has ever committed or will ever commit. That is what is sitting on his chest under that olive tree. That is the cup he is staring at when he prays the sentence Christians have repeated for 2,000 years. Father, if you be willing, remove this cup from me. Nevertheless, not my will, but thine be done. He is not afraid of nails. He is not afraid of pain. He watched his friend Lazarus walk out of a grave. He knows what is on the other side. He is staring at the cup, and he is asking one time if there is another way. There is not. He drinks it anyway. And 3 feet away from him, close enough to hear the cries, close enough to see the blood mixing with the dust, Peter is asleep. James is asleep. John is asleep. He had asked them to watch with him for 1 hour. They couldn't stay awake. Now watch what happens next. Because a few hours later, in the courtyard of the high priest, on a cold night, by a charcoal fire, a servant girl looks at Peter and asks him if he was with the man from Galilee. Peter says no. She asks again. He says no. A third time. He swears, "I don't know the man." And then a rooster crows. Matthew chapter 26, verse 75. And Peter remembered the word of Jesus, which said unto him, "Before the cock crow, thou shalt deny me thrice." And he went out, and wept bitterly. The Greek for wept bitterly is eklausen pikros. He is wet with bitterness, a broken, throat-tearing weeping in the dark. Klio, the same word he used for the wailing over Jerusalem. Pikros, the bitterness. That is the fourth weeping, not Jesus. Peter, the disciple who could not stay awake while his Lord wept blood, walks out into the dark a few hours later, and weeps the same broken weeping his Lord had wept in the garden 3 feet away from him. He could not pray with him, so he learned to cry with him. The student takes on the tears of the teacher. And maybe if you have ever woken up too late, ever failed someone who needed you to stay awake, ever heard a rooster crow inside your own chest in the dark, you understand the fourth weeping better than you understand the first 3. Because the fourth weeping is the one that is offered to you. So here is where we land. 3 Greek words. 3 weeping s. Dakruo at a tomb, silent tears for a friend, with fury underneath them, at the grave itself. Klao over a city public, throat-tearing grievance for a people who did not know what was coming. Kroj in a gardenous cream into the dark with blood in his sweat. Before the cross he could see and could not avoid. And one more, a fourth weeping. Peter in the dark by a charcoal fire. Weeping the same broken weeping he had failed to stay awake for 3 feet away from his Lord. The student takes on the tears of the teacher. That is the first thing. Here is the second one. Whatever you are weeping over tonight, a grave you cannot stop visiting, a city you watched lose itself, a garden of a decision you cannot see the other side of, a charcoal fire where you swore you did not know him and walked out into the dark. He has already been to that exact kind of weeping before you. He did not weep because he was weak. He wept because the Hebrew prophet Isaiah said it's 700 years before he was born, a man of sorrows and acquainted with grievance. The Hebrew there for acquainted with is yada. It does not mean he had heard of grievance. It means he had lived inside it. The way you know a spouse. The way you know your own face. He knows yours. He is the third one. And this one is the one I want you to sit with after you close this video. In the very last book of the Bible, in Revelation chapter 21, the Apostle John writes one sentence about what God does at the end of all things. And God shall wipe away all tears from their eyes. Read that sentence slowly. He will not send an angel to do it. He will not delegate it to a saint. He will not let it happen by some impersonal cosmic process. The verb is in the first person and the subject is God himself. The hand that wipes the tear at the end of the world is the hand that wept first. The God who cried silent tears at the grave of his friend. The God who wailed over a city from the back of a donkey. The God who screamed into the dirt of a garden until his sweat ran red. That God, the one who has wept harder than you have ever wept, is the God who, in the end, will reach down and dry your face himself. Which of the 3 weeping s hit you the hardest tonight? The tomb, the city, or the garden? Tell me below. And tell me what you are weeping over right now in your own life. I read every comment, and I pray over every name. If this fed you, share it with someone who is weeping tonight. They might be sitting at a kitchen table at this exact hour wondering if anyone sees them. Someone does. He wept, so that one day you wouldn't have to. I will see you in the next one.